We are, we're going to be on page 268, 269. And we'll start off with a little bit of review for those people who are here, and then we'll move along, kind of maybe finish this section and move on a little bit. So, what we're going to do is, let's start at the top of 268. On the top of 268, there is this baraita. Can someone remind me what a baraita is?
Something from the same era as the...
Correct. Same era as the Mishnah. And this baraita, what it does is it takes this verse from 23:24 in Deuteronomy, which I have these sheets for everybody if they want to have to share. You can see the verses you can share. It's okay. We're not going to spend so much time with it, so don't worry. And what it does is it takes this verse from 23:24, and what it does is it goes like word by word and explains its meaning. Following that, what it does on the second two paragraphs on 268, which is still on 6a, what it does is it says, well, we have this problem. We have this thing that's said in this verse, and then we have the same lesson being learned from somewhere else, which is problematic. It's a contradiction, right? We can't have Torah teach us the same thing from two different sources. The Talmud is very uncomfortable with that as a possibility. Every verse comes to teach us something new. So, for example, let's look at the one where it says "and do." It's the third paragraph. It says "and do," which is a quote from the verse, which in the verse, in the Baraita tells us means that the court has the power to coerce us to fulfill our obligations. So if you look up in the very first paragraph, "and do" is in the right, the very center. It says this is an admonition to the court to make you fulfill your vow. All right, now back down. It says "and do." This is a warning to the court to make you fulfill your vow. Right? We just learned that. Then it says, why do I need this derivation? Why do I need this described from Deuteronomy? Because this rule is derived from the verse, "He shall offer it," from Leviticus, which you also have on your sheet. As it is taught in a baraita, so we have this verse, it is explained in a baraita. The verse states, "He shall offer it," which teaches that he must be forced to bring his offering. One might have thought that he may be forced to bring his offering even against his will. Therefore, the verse states, in accordance with his will, which is the word lirtzono, meaning to say, in the verse it has this word called ratzon, which means will. And in the verse, you'll see it's translated differently on your sheet. But according to his will is understood by the rabbis to mean that a person has to want to do something. Meaning to say, if a court is going to force someone to do something, what's the problem?
The problem is that this is a free will offering.
Right. You've made a choice, and also we don't want the court is not inclined to force people to do things. All the more so when it should be according to their will.
Well, but I think also a thing like if this were an obligatory offering, it would be obvious that the court would force you to fulfill your obligation, and whether or not you wanted to.
Yeah, but once you make the obligation, then it becomes the free will is making the obligation. Once you make the obligation, you are accountable for that obligation.
Which is the way the rabbis read it. However, yes, and if I say, well, I made this obligation, I don't want to do it anymore, the court doesn't have a lot of power, because this teaching is telling us that it has to be according to the person's will. They have to say that they want to do it. So let's read the end of the section. How so? How is this possible that we can merge these things? The court coerces him until he says, I want to. I want to bring the offering.
That's the funniest thing in the world.
Now, since all these halacha were all, right? So we have this little window, right, into this one circumstance. But the real problem is not whether or not we can force him or not to do it. The problem is that we already knew this. We're learning it now from the verse in Leviticus, lirtzono, according to his will, and this verse in Deuteronomy. And that's the problem. And if you look at the last line in the Steinsaltz, now since all of these halachot, because it's more than one, are already known from other sources, what's the point of this repetition?
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, you love it when it
like
asks
this
this,
though, right?
right?
It makes sense. In fact, why have the whole discussion? A vow is a vow. A vow stands. It's not questioned. A vow stands unless some unexpected turn of events occurs.
Right. You're about to be disappointed though, so don't get too excited.
Felt good for a minute, didn't it?
So close, Joe. So close.
That's what keeps
So,
you
but
coming
but
back.
here's the point, right? Here's the point. We have more than one verse. It's trying to come to teach us one thing. And so the question is, why are we doing this extra derivation? And the classic answer of the rabbis is going to be what?
But there's something different about
Right.
one of them.
We're learning, there must be something different, right? And so it says, the Gemara answers. One set of verses is referring to a case where one said that he vowed to bring an offering but did not yet set aside a specific animal for his vow. So case one is, I made a vow, but did not set aside this specific animal. And one set of verses is referring to a case where the person set aside the animal for their vow, but did not sacrifice it on the altar. And then you might be asking, how the hell did they get there? Sorry, I didn't mean to poke you. And that would be a reasonable question. But let's step back, right? Thank you.
Promise to pay someone back, you better do it.
Oh, you've learned something.
Do
It's
not
good.
delay.
Are you sure?
He definitely did not delay.
It took a week, so I've already delayed. But it didn't
Yes,
take
but none
three,
of us were here last week, so
and it
we
wasn't
don't
3
know
festival
that.
cycles. So I think I'm
Is it that simple?
Okay.
No.
Okay. So let's just back up 1 second. Okay, we're doing a bit of review. I make a vow. Step one. I set aside the appropriate object of my vow. In this case, it's a sacrifice. Step two.
Good job.
Okay? Then I sacrifice. Like I take it up to be sacrificed. Step three. Right? Those are the major 3 steps. If you look at this circumstance, it's step one, but the first case is step 1 but not 2. And circumstance 2 is step 1 and 2 but not 3. Let's just like imagine that for a moment, right? That would be the circumstance. I said, hey, I'd love to have you for dinner. Right? But I never go through the effort of specifying which
The date.
week. Right, the date. Right? Let alone having the dinner.
But that's really not a vow.
You're right, it's not really a vow, it's an analogy.
But if it
You're
were
right.
that,
So what would be a different example then?
all right. So how about when you promise to give tzedakah in honor of your mother's yard sale?
Okay.
Is that a vow? Is that considered a vow?
Let's go with it. Let's say
Okay.
I vow to do this,
Okay.
right? Not really, but let's imagine.
Okay.
And then-
So you would have to say, okay, I'm gonna write the check. All right.
I di-
but
you
I
didn't
haven't
specify-
actually sent the check.
Or you also haven't specified how
I
much.
haven't specified. Okay. Well,
Right? But or that's circumstance 1. I say
So-
I'm gonna give tzedakah for X reason.
There you go.
Right? But I didn't specify how much or by when. right?
Right.
Or I've written the check, but I haven't sent it in yet. Right?
Your check is in the mail.
That would be me.
Right?
Your check is in the mail.
No, it's not even in the
I
mail.
know, that's the point.
Right. Right. The third step would be I've sent it off, right?
Right.
So here's the thing. This part's a little confusing, which is why we spent a couple of weeks on it now, which is the following. We have the major issue we have that we're trying to resolve is I have 2 texts that teach the same thing. They can't. They're not allowed. They have to teach us something different. So what we're going to see is one case where we're going to assume one thing is true but not the other. And then we're going to see case 2 where we see that the other thing is true and not the first thing. We'll say, right, so in case 1, it's A but not B. And then in case 2, it would be B but not A. I promise it'll make more sense, but I'm giving you the structure of this argument.
Is that a vow?
It's not a vow.
There you go.
But I want to do it, so it's okay. So the question it's asking is the following. Why is it necessary to teach both? We have both. Why is it necessary to teach both? Can I get a volunteer to read the paragraph in English? And it is necessary. It's the second to last one on the page. Go for it.
And it is necessary to teach the halakha in both cases, as had the Torah taught us only about the halakha of the case where one said that he vowed to bring an offering but didn't yet set aside a specific amount for the vow. One might have said that only in this case has he transgressed because he didn't keep his word. However, if he set aside a specific animal for his vow...
So let's stop that before you go along. Okay, let's make sure we understand this. So if the Torah only taught us one of them, which was case one, what was case one?
Case one is vow.
I made the vow, but I didn't do anything else. I didn't do only step one.
Right.
Right? But I didn't set aside the animal. I might say, right? What I've transgressed is not keeping my word. I said something, but I didn't follow through. Right? Everybody with me so far? Right? I said something, but I didn't follow through, and that is what I've transgressed. Keep going, Rabbi Diane. However, I know you read it already, but however.
Right. However, if he set aside a specific animal for his vow, but did not yet sacrifice it on the altar, one might say that anywhere that it is in the treasure house of the merciful one, and I understand that to mean that it's hekdesh. I mean, it's that object is designated for God no matter where it is in the universe.
Right, so that's really two important points, so let's make sure we specify. So step one is to make the vow. Step two is to designate the animal, right? So in the first case, this is part A now, I made the vow. I've made a transgression by not following through. But in the case where I did specify which animal, but I haven't brought it to the temple, it's still in God's treasury. What's God's treasury? It's the whole world. I haven't transgressed anything yet. It's still possible for me to do this, right? So in case one, the A part is I've transgressed because I haven't followed through. But I didn't transgress because even though I designated it, I haven't missed my opportunity. It's still amongst God's existence. Is everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
All right, keep reading. Just finish that paragraph. As the world.
Because the world and everything in it belongs to God, and therefore it makes no difference if he delays in bringing it to the temple. Therefore, it is necessary to teach that even when one has not set aside a specific animal, he still transgresses the prohibition.
Right. So this is the first case. Is everyone with me? So it was necessary to teach one of these things because why?
Because in the first case he transgresses, but in the second case he doesn't transgress because he already focused the animal.
Right. So we learn one set of these texts to teach us that the vow is where I get the transgression, but not the designation of the animal. Because if I'm designating the animal, I'm still clear. It's still in God's treasure.
Or so you would think.
Right. We're gonna suspend disbelief for one moment. We're gonna hold two things simultaneously. So, is everybody with me? Yes?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure. This is really complicated. So look. Okay.
The animal has been designated. There's an implied vow, but the time limit has not been set.
Right. So according to one of the verses, if I only learned it once, I might take away the lesson that if I designated the animal, I'm still in the clear. Right?
No.
For what we've learned so far.
No, the only thing that isn't clear is the time limit on the vow.
Well, sort of. So we spent all those weeks learning about how many festivals you have, but here we haven't specified it. All right, let's read it.
So
Yeah.
if you really want to go there,
Oh, I want to go there.
so
this is
it's,
Joe you're talking to. You probably don't.
it's complicated.
Yes, it is.
So it's a temple. It's an implied temple vow. But the time limit was. Like I said, I'm not sure I understand. It's not clear to me whether this whether this starts the clock of the 3 holidays.
But I think you do get it, because that's exactly right. It's not clear whether or not it starts the clock. According to this read, as soon as I make the vow, the clock starts, possibly. But if I designated the animal in this worldview, that clock that ends up giving me a lot of extra time, because as long as the animal is designated, I say Fred the goat is the one who's going to the temple. As long as Fred the goat is still alive, I haven't transgressed, according to this view, right? Fred the goat is ready to go to the temple whenever I, decide to put him in the car.
Whenever I get there.
Yeah. But if I make the vow and I never do any other steps, that's a problem. Okay?
Yes.
All right. Now we're going to flip everything on its head. Can I get someone else to read for me? And had the Torah.
All right, well,
Yeah.
and had the Torah taught us only about the case where one set aside a specific animal for his vow, but did not yet sacrifice it on the altar, one might have said that only in this case has he transgressed because he's keeping the animal for himself.
Okay. So now we're gonna make the opposite point now, which is I've now vowed and I designated the animal, but I haven't taken him to the temple yet. What does that say? Under this read,
Under this read, it says you've transgressed
why?
because you're keeping it for yourself.
Yeah, I'm
You
being
still have the
selfish.
benefit of having the animal.
Yeah,
Right?
Fred the goat is still giving me all sorts of benefit by eating my lawn, right?
And you're getting milk.
And I'm getting milk,
You're getting milk.
right? I haven't done,
Fred.
I haven't, right?
Fred, you're getting milk from Fred.
Right, maybe not from Fred.
All right, you're cutting his hair. You're cutting his hair, okay?
Frida, there you go.
Freedom.
But the point is, right, this is the opposite, which is now the same thing I said before wasn't an issue is now an issue. Right? Which is that I might be living I might be acting selfishly, and therefore I am transgressing. Even though Frida now is not, right, is designated, because I haven't brought Frida to the temple means that I'm transgressing. I'm not doing what I said I was doing, right? And?
Oh, yes. But if he said that he vowed to bring an offering but did not yet set aside a specific animal for this vow, one might say that his mere speech is nothing, and there is no transgression provided that he's not actually set aside an animal.
Great.
Therefore, it's necessary to teach the halakha in both cases.
Right. Therefore, that concludes
That's
the
why
unit.
we have two verses.
Right? So the second case is this. I might say, you know what? I vow to do this thing. What is the Gemara telling me? Words are words.
Until you set aside an animal,
Until
there is
you've
no vow.
actually done something real, your words don't mean that much. Which is exactly, of course, the opposite of the previous, which means, why do we need both? Why is it necessary to learn both of these verses?
Because they contradict each other.
Yes, and more specifically,
They're both sins.
So you just don't do it?
they're both a transgression. We needed each verse to teach us about the other half. Because if we only learned one of them, we might have said, I've designated Frida, haven't brought Frida to the temple, but the whole world is God's temple. I don't need to worry about it. But we know that that's not true, because we know that until you've actually brought the animal to the temple, your obligation hasn't been fulfilled. And so the question of why did we need both sets of these verses is because with only one we would have only known half the story. We needed both. Is everybody with me? Okay, yes. Yeah, it's confusing.
Well,
Why-
what's confusing is that your explanation before Was it you have step 1 and step 2 in one case, and step 1 and step 3 in the other case?
I
You need all three
said,
of them.
so
Did I
it's
not understand?
it's step 1, but not step 2,
Okay.
and step 1 and step 2, but not 3.
Okay, so it's 1,
Right, because
2,
steps
but
1
you
and 2
need
and 3 is
also.
I made the vow, I designated the animal, and I brought it to sacrifice.
Right.
So in no cases have I brought it to the temple
I
yet.
get that, but so it's step 1, but not step 2. So in the first case, he's only done one thing.
Right,
He's
I made the vow. Right. And according to the first read,
Right.
that's the problem.
Right. Okay.
And then the second read, step 1 and step 2, the designation, which is I'm being selfish.
Uh-huh.
And that's the problem.
Okay. But nowhere does it yet say you have to bring it. I guess what I'm saying is the thing that neither of these varieties tell us that you also have to bring it to the temple.
Well, no, I mean, sort of it does, right? Because if I've designated it, I've brought it and I've designated it, or I'm sorry, I vowed it and I designated it,
Yeah, and
that means I've transgressed because I haven't brought it to the temple
you
yet.
haven't brought it to the temple.
Right? It's like they're dependents still.
The point is the transgression.
Right. Right? Until I've done step 3, step 2 is not enough.
Right.
Step 1 is not enough.
Okay.
I actually have to do all 3 big steps.
Okay.
You with it now?
Yeah.
Cool. Good clarification.
So this is, all right, full disclosure, I'm not an attorney, never took a law class, but this is like case law, legal precedent, and we could talk about that a lot, but I think it's even more interesting, why is Talmud so obsessed with the concept of every verse in Torah teaches something else, something different? What's the problem with repetition? Particularly since Torah is full of what seems to be, to naive people like me, repetition.
Right, so I think the presumption is that there are limited resources. The resources are words of Torah. The limited resource. There are only so many.
343,000.
Sure, I'm not sure off the top, right? But let's say, right? If we're going to accept, at least, you don't have to believe it, but let's say the rabbis of the Talmud are under the presumption that God gave us Torah literally. Why would God give us a limited resource, right? In the sense it's not really limited, right? Torah is so proven to be unlimited in some way, and not teach us something new at every turn.
Well, the answer to that question appears obvious to me. So, humans forget.
That's certainly one answer.
A standard tool to remember is the use of repetition.
Also,
but here-
repetition can mean give it more power. It's more important to repeat it.
So then the question is, why is one idea repeated, but another idea not repeated?
It's not as important.
Well, exactly. I mean, but it also, again, because Torah can be so terse, right? For the rabbis, that suggests that there's a reason why, and that we interpret things at different levels because of that.
Okay, so let me digress because this is not fundamental. So let's take what I consider to be a fundamental basis of religion, particularly the Jewish religion, the Ten Commandments. Most everybody believes that they're repeated twice. I think there's actually 3 repetitions of the Ten Commandments, and at least 2 of them have word variations. Wouldn't it be easy to say that the repetition of the Ten Commandments is there to make sure we understand its importance? The reason why they're not repeated identically the 3 times is a subject for discussion.
So I don't think, I mean, the answer is yes to all of it, right? The fact is that the Torah tells us like 35 times that you should treat the stranger kindly. Like its repetition is so obvious, is so fundamental. It's clear that it's important. So yes, there is a sense that repetition exists, and that it means that we need to pay special attention. And holding it simultaneously, the rabbis are uncomfortable with the idea that repetition is just there for repetition's sake. They're just uncomfortable with it. They don't like the idea that the Torah would have wasted energy on saying the same thing twice. Everything is important.
So
That isn't
So
to say
then-
you're wrong. I'm
then-
not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying that the rabbis of the Talmud are uncomfortable with the idea.
So then in the commandment where it says you shouldn't kill, verse you shouldn't murder, the fact that they're not repeated identically, there's a lesson there.
So I think if I were to embody the rabbis of the Talmud for the moment, I would say I have to learn something different. They're teaching me different things. It's not the same thing. It might be nuance. I need to learn both parts because I'm going to miss something otherwise. That's how the rabbis would take it. Right? Yeah? You don't have to accept it. You don't have to agree for yourself. But the rabbis of the Talmud are uncomfortable with the idea of the repetition. But as a human being, let's say a human being is writing a text, making sure that I repeat something, perhaps as a refrain, is essential for me to make sure that I know what's important. But to the rabbis of the Talmud, this is not a human document. Well, Talmud is, but not the Torah.
So I'm imagining a circle of ancient rabbis sitting around, and how this whole concept may have come about is when they come upon a repetition that whoever is leading it says, well, what else might we learn from this? And then somebody says, well, and then somehow that when it finally gets written down is that you have to learn something different, but I bet it didn't start that way.
It is an evolution.
No, it says this again. Didn't we just say it in Exodus? It just said it in Talmud. So what else could we learn from this? Because of the context where it is, or its intent, or whatever.
I like that. It's a very evolving view. I like that. Seems as reasonable as any other reason.
Okay, so now here, I'm just sitting here and thinking about this idea that each verse has one specific meaning. Is that?
According to potentially each rabbi, meaning to say, right, that we could have different reads of the same verse.
Only use a verse
Correct.
once.
I have a certain amount.
I was gonna say,
I have a
that
certain
kind of-
amount of screwdrivers in my set. I can only use one per job.
Right, I gotcha. Okay.
You might use a different one for a different job.
Right, I
We
got
might
it.
use different screwdrivers for the same job.
But I
right?
can't use the same screwdriver for two different jobs. I can't. You can use it for different
Correct.
jobs. I can only use it for
I think one of the problems is you can't. I mean, you could. You'd be a lunatic, and you'd get a PhD for it, but you'd be a lunatic. You can't go through the entire Talmud and then double check this. It would take a Herculean effort.
I think that's called Tosafot.
Maybe, but they didn't have the
It is.
they
I
didn't
think it
have
actually is.
they didn't have the search engine resources
Right,
that we
no.
do. It could be done now, but it wouldn't be done easily. So I just want to say that because I want to take a step back from what Joe is saying, which is like, it can't be this way. This is kind of ridiculous and reductive and overly anal and meticulous. And I would sort of agree with you in the sense that, like, I'm not sure it's a philosophical principle. I'm not sure it's like literal in the sense that I'm not sure it can actually be accomplished this way. And there are other reasons for that.
Like
and they
found
have
rock.
to do with just how massive the Talmud is and how long the document took to construct. I mean, this is a document that was constructed over 600 years. So, like, can we really say, and is in 63 different tractates, can we really say that, like, no verse in the entire Torah was ever used twice by the same rabbi? Like, not without a PhD and a
big
giant
data.
computer. Right.
I think it's been checked because otherwise the statement wouldn't be made, right?
No, yeah, but no, that's
So I think the
statement
question.
predates the-
Thank you, Mark. I'm comfortable moving on now.
that's what I'm trying to tell you.
So I think so I think there's one important lesson to add to this. There's one important lesson to add to this. I think I'm glad you mentioned, right? Which is that the Talmud is telling a story about itself as much as anything else. Right?
It's really beautiful, yeah.
Right? Meaning to say that even if it isn't true, the Talmud wants it to be true.
Right.
It's telling a story that is the way we should be doing it, even if it's not actually doing it that
Right.
way. And so I think that's an important thing to hold, right? Which is the Talmud has an inclination. It wants it to be a certain way. All right, let's move along.
Yeah, there are rules here. You can't break these rules. There may be some place in the Talmud where this rule gets broken, but when they lay it down, they're saying like, it's like, do you guys follow basketball at all?
Do as I say, not as I do.
Do you guys know basketball at all?
That's it.
There's the traveling rule, which means you have to dribble the ball before you take 2 steps. Was it James Harden the other day? He took 4 steps backwards and did not get called on this travel. It's like, the video got shown. I mean, he was like backing up. It was like running a mile of traveling, and he didn't get called. There are exceptions to the rule where the rule may get
Because he was
bent.
walking backwards?
It was just the refs screwed up. The refs here may
Kind of
screw
like
up.
Abbott and Costello going
Yeah,
through
yeah, there's like
a
a.
turnstile.
Okay, let's move along.
Sorry.
No, it's perfect. 269, top of the page.
Hey, turning the page.
I'm glad we're all more or less together because I've now learned this section 3 times in 3 weeks.
Should we have
So.
us see you like?
Well,
every time you turn a
we
page?
haven't actually made a Gemara page yet, so let's stick. All right.
We're working on it.
So now, right now that we're satisfied with this, the first section is going to be the Gemara raises the difficulty. Okay. All right. I want to point out an important Gemara word, which is right in the middle. It's the second line, third word. It says utznan. What word does that remind you of?
And it is fun.
And it is taught, right? But it's kind of like the Tanya. It's kind of like Tanu Rabbanan. However, in this construction, when it's utznan, it comes from the Mishnah itself. They're quoting from the Mishnah. So it's not a Braita, but it is from the Mishnah itself. And then you'll notice at the end of that line, at the end of the next line, it says ha-omer. The prefix ha, in addition to meaning the, is the introduction to a question. Didn't he say? Ha-omer? Didn't he say? Right? Didn't you tell me you were going to come for coffee on Tuesday? Didn't you tell me that? So we already know in this there's going to be a statement from the Mishnah and 2 questions at least. Ha-omer, didn't he say? Okay, can I get a volunteer to read the Gemara raises a difficulty in English? Go for it.
The Gemara raises difficulty. How can you say that the Gemara is dealing with a case where one merely said that he vowed to bring an offering, but did not yet set aside a specific animal?
Great, let's just pause there for a sec.
Question.
So the circumstance, right, is 1 but not 2. Step 1 but not 2. I merely said that I made a vow, but I didn't specify an animal. So the question the Gemara is asking is what? How dare you, Talmud? No. But yes.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Which is like, what are the circumstances? So like, even before we read ahead, like, what are the circumstances this might even happen?
What makes you coerce somebody?
I'm sorry? I can't hear you.
Coercion.
Coercion, right? So I might have coerced somebody to making a vow, right? So these vows are going to be happening like before the court and publicly. So the presumption is they're not being coerced, but that could be a circumstance.
Or embarrass them that they didn't do. That they have all those riches, but they're not making a vow to.
Where they haven't actually followed through in any way. Right. Okay. Keep going, Manny.
Isn't a gift offering mentioned in this verse, and we learned in the Mishnah? What is a vow offering?
All right. Let's pause. Actually, before we go on, can someone read for me, and Manny will come back in to read the note on the right where it says halakha. where it'll give us a little definition of vow offering and gift offering, so we have some background. Go for it, Joe.
A vow offering and a gift offering. When one undertakes to bring a burnt offering, it is called a vow offering. When he undertakes to bring a particular animal as a burnt offering, it is called a gift offering.
Okay, so let's just make sure we understand that. In the vague, in the generic, I'm going to bring a burnt offering, becomes a vow. I'm going to bring Frida the goat as a burnt offering, is a gift. That's the distinction so far. Keep going.
The difference between the two is that in the case of a vow offering, if the animal that he later sets aside for the offering dies or is stolen, he is obligated to pay restitution for it. Whereas, in the case of a gift offering, if the animal dies or is stolen, he is not obligated to sacrifice another animal in its place.
Okay, we're gonna learn that in the text itself. But just to spool it out, if I say I'm gonna bring my goat to the temple, a goat to the temple as a burnt offering, and the goat I have disappears, I have to pay, I still committed to a goat. I have to replace it somehow. But if I say I'm gonna bring Frida the goat, right? And Howie comes and steals Frida from me, right? I'm kind of made in the shade, right? Like I'm clear. I can't bring Frida anymore. I don't have Frida to give. Is everyone with me? So let's just say it out loud. What's the difference between a vow offering and a gift offering here? Both of them have burnt offerings.
But one's more specific.
One's more specific.
Indefinite versus definite.
Right, indefinite, right? Which one is which?
The vow is the non-specific.
Right.
And the gift is the specific.
Got it. Exactly right. Okay, keep going, Maddie. So we learned in the Mishnah, right? Isn't a gift offering mentioned in the verse? And we learned in the Mishnah.
What is a vow offering? It is an offering brought by one who says, it is incumbent upon me to bring a burnt offering. And what is a gift offering? It is an offering brought by one who says, concerning a particular animal, I undertake to bring this animal as a burnt offering.
So I want to point out two things. One is, here we're getting that source of specificity and in direct and indefinite and definite. We are also starting to learn what the formulation of this language looks like. What does it mean for me to make a vow? What does that phrasing look like? Here we're starting to learn, right? It's incumbent upon me. I undertake, right? These kinds of things. Now, of course, it's not fully spelled out. Half of it's in Steinsaltz, but even still. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Yes? Okay.
It's so, I can give
Yeah.
you an example of that in
Great.
current life.
Great.
Which is family heirlooms, where somebody says, you know, you have your grandfather's watch, and there's only one watch that is your grandfather's watch or was. So if say a mother says to a grandchild, I'm going to give you a watch that's been in the family, then that vow has to be, and say that that's a vow, that vow has to, what she's on the hook for is to give this grandchild some watch.
Right, that would be the vow offering, if you will.
That's the vow offering. If she says, I'm going to give you your grandfather's watch when you turn 18, say, then she has to give that object.
Right, and that would be
And that would be a gift offering.
Exactly right.
And the point is that if grandfather's watch then disappears somewhere, the mother is not obligated to give the grandchild another watch because it wouldn't have the same meaning to that child.
Right.
As this exact object would have.
Right, and in the case where I had a watch in mind, or I had a couple of watches and I wasn't able to find the right one, I could replace it with a different one, right? There was restitution or substitution
That would
of
be,
some
I'll
version.
give you a watch for your 18th.
Right,
That's right.
I'll
exactly.
give you a watch.
Exactly
A watch.
right.
That's the A
Not
watch.
for
That would be
your
this watch.
grandfather's watch.
Exactly right.
Right.
Exactly right.
Now, however, it's really not that simple.
Nothing is that.
If it were that simple,
Right.
the book would be a lot shorter.
Right?
Okay, let's keep going. Can I get someone else to read? And what is the difference, Elisa?
And what is the difference between a vow offering in a gift offering, with regard to the vow offering, if the animal died or was stolen, the one who took the vow is obligated to pay restitution. He undertook to bring a burnt offering without specifying the animal, and therefore, until he brings that offering, he is not absolved of this obligation. With regard to a gift offering, however, if the animal died or was stolen, he is not obligated to pay restitution for it because he undertook to bring a specific animal that is no longer possible. In the case of a gift offering, then a specific animal must have already been set aside as an offering.
So then the question, right? So why are we bringing this up? It's good to know, but in the context of what we've been talking about, why is this relevant? Because the circumstance we had just been talking about was the circumstance. We had just learned, we had this difficulty. We just learned A, but not B, and then B, but not A, right? Which is if I made a vow, but I didn't specify what it is, in one of those circumstances, I wasn't liable, right? So the question that it's asking, ultimately, right, I am liable. Then the question it's asking is, okay, but like, what circumstance is that? What circumstance is it that I've made this vow, this obligation, but I didn't specify what it was, right? And here we're finding out. Actually, that's a particular type of offering. It's a vow offering versus a gift offering, where it is specific, right? Because it might be reasonable for me to say, I'm going to take a cow from my flock, or a goat from my flock. We've been using goats today. I'm going to use goat from my flock and bring him to the temple. One might say, I haven't done anything wrong. I got lots of goats. I'll choose one of them. It doesn't matter which one. But here we're saying, actually, that is a particular category. So we might have this. How can the Gemara say this? The answer is because it's actually its own category. Okay. All right. The last section. Then we're gonna stop for the day. It says, Rava said, I think neither of you have read, so why don't one of you take us home?
Rava said, you can find a case of a gift offering where a specific animal has not yet been set aside. For example, where one said, it is incumbent upon me to bring a burnt offering on the condition that after I set an animal aside in fulfillment of my vow, I will not be liable to replace it should the animal die or be stolen.
Look at that. And if there's a will, there's a halachic way.
If there's a weasel.
If you include it in the contract,
right?
Yes, well, and that's actually also how ketubas work.
yeah.
Who would have
Well, so wait a second. This is about a vow I'm making, right? Meaning to say, I might say, right? This is a gift offering, which means all of these things are voluntary. Right, so I'm volunteering to give something, right? And the question is this: what's the case of a gift offering where a specific animal has not yet been set aside? Meaning to say, I don't want to be in the category of making a vow. I want to be in the category of a gift offering. So then the question is, how do we wedge this in so that it fits all the other categories? Meaning to say, how can I make a gift offering such that I don't actually have to specify an animal? Why would that be relevant? Because that places me into the category of making a obligation, a commitment, but doing step one, but not step two. And still be in the gift, right? So that means no matter which type of vow you make, you are still liable if you just made the vow part. Here we have the answer, which is if I constructed my vow such, then I would be placed in that category. In the sense that the vow itself makes me liable. Because the vow is the important part for the rabbis here. They really want this vow to be the important part. Not just the setting aside. Is everybody with me? No, that one's really complicated. So, Rava said, you can find a case of a gift offering where a specific animal has not yet been set aside, right? Meaning to say, in general, I might say, I'm gonna bring Frida the goat to the temple, right? That's me specifying the animal, and therefore I'm in what category? Gift, right? I've made it definite. Rava saying, actually, you can be in this circumstance and still not specify freedom. And this is what that looks like.
But
It is.
like, let's say freedom was stolen. That's like going back to then you don't have to. You don't have to. Obviously, you can't then not bring her to.
Right.
But that's in the case of a vow. Oh, no, that's in the case of a gift offering. You're right.
Yeah,
Okay,
in
never
case of
mind.
the gift
Yep.
offering, then you're absolved of that.
Right.
Right.
Right. So it's not that I am. I'm not liable. The question is, what's the
You're still liable
circumstance?
to bring, but you're not. You obviously can't bring.
Right. So the question that the Rava is bringing up. No, it's exactly right. So the circumstance that Rava is bringing is, how can I put myself in the definite case, but not specify definitely?
Right.
And why
Right?
should you be allowed to do that? I guess that's
Yeah.
my question.
Well,
It's like either you're making a vow or you're giving a gift. Like, make up your mind.
Right.
Well, but
Rava doesn't want you to make up your mind.
but the one case is not necessarily your choice.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, it's like either you're required, either the vow is, you know, something that you're supposed to do, and you go and you do it. You know, you make the vow and you go and you do it, or you're giving a gift.
Or, but you didn't, what if you made the vow,
The gift
made
is-
a vow to do it, and then something that happened to you in the meantime, and you simply didn't have a chance to designate?
Let's say you want to do this, but you're not wealthy enough to replace the goat should something happen.
Whoa. Well, then should you go into debt essentially to fulfill
Or
those
could you
vows?
structure your vow in a way?
That's the,
That you wouldn't ever go into
Right.
debt. And is that the right thing to do? Like, is that really what God wants? Man, is that the commandment?
So this is
Well,
a
Only
that-
make,
the-
only,
the
this
rabbis
is
only
option.
fulfill your vows if you can afford to?
Well, so this is an option, right? Meaning to say that this is something that someone is volunteering to do,
Right.
right? We're not. The obligation comes because I've opted in, not because I have a pre-existing obligation. That's the difference. Meaning to say, I stepped into this. I am the one who initiated this process
Right.
by making a commitment. It's not that God obligates me the way God obligates me to the Shema every day. Right? Those not the same. It's me doing something because I opted into doing it.
Oh, wait. How is a, you know, so like bringing a sacrifice to the temple, how is that different from saying the Shema?
So here's the difference. There are, we used the example of the Paschal lamb earlier in the
Okay.
Gemara, right?
Okay.
Which is, that actually has to do with the holiday. I'm obligated to do that regardless of vows I make.
Right.
I'm obligated because that's the system.
Right.
This is not that. This is, the system does not obligate me to do this. I have obligated myself to
I don't
do
have to
this.
vow that I'm going to say Shema in the morning. I'm out of luck if I don't say Shema in the morning, whether I vowed it or not.
That's the difference. So this is about opting in. And so in the circumstance where I said, look, I'm gonna if I do this, I think how his example, Rabbi Stein's example was perfect, which was I want to do this because I had a good year or I have this, but I won't have the financial ability to replace it if God forbid something happens. So Rava is coming to tell us
Then it's okay.
that there is a way to do it. It requires you to like add a number of years.
if you're
Right.
afraid that this might happen, then you would put this extra little clause or couple of words in, just to really make sure that if in the interim between when you've made this vow and when you have a chance to designate the thing that you're going to give, if something should go awry in between in that interim
Right.
time, it's clear that it's meant
Right.
to be a gift offering.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I think that
Right,
otherwise,
we are placing ourselves in that
you will
category.
put yourself back into the vow offering category, and you will have to.
Exactly. No, it's exactly right. It's exactly right. So I think this is the takeaway, I think, for us, which is it's important for us when we make commitments to be specific about what those commitments are, such that we can fulfill them in a way that makes sense within our ability. And I think what Rav is doing is not necessarily giving us an out. He doesn't give us a reason as to why he's doing it. He's saying, look, real life is messier than two categories. Right? The rabbis make all of these machinations, because when you have something that is, giant air quotes, objective, and it encounters reality, it doesn't look like that anymore. One of our colleagues likes to say, right, so there's this term, l'chatchila, ideal, the world, right, we have this ideal case, and b'diavad, after the fact, like once, shit hits the fan, right? And he says, we live in a b'diavad world, which is, we only live in a world where it hits reality. It's the only one we live in. And what I think Rav is doing here is saying, real world, people don't always have, we don't know the reason. He doesn't give that to us. What he's saying is, if you want to place yourself into a particular category, you can. But let's be clear, if you place yourself in this category, you have an obligation still. There's no one saying you're not obligated anymore. All of these is we're reminding us that this obligation still stands. Okay? And so I think, once again, the takeaway is for us to be careful about our obligations, be specific about what we commit to, and then ultimately to follow through. All right, good learning today, everybody. We will still be here next week.